Okay, for the law of value to be whole, there must be two conditions that you have to meet. The first, the social necessity labor time. The second thing is the law of value. Must actually somehow met the social needs, demand and supply kind of interactions. Again, this is just an example that I try to show it to you. You can read it by yourself. Okay, now this is the interesting part, the surplus value. This is the thing that this is the thing that I think is new to the classical economics. Never before, never before Marx, those who are famous at least, actually mentioned about surplus value. Okay, where does it come from? So what is the surplus value? Is actually a profit. But again, it's more complicated than that. So okay, imagine again the simple society where we have a C1 and C2, two different products. To exchange the two different products, we have a ratio 1C1 is equal to 2C2. It's actually established and follow the exchange of equivalence, the law of value that we have just now. Meaning it's actually exchange in equal kind of relationships because of the number of labours, the amount of labours involved in the production of each commodities. So commodities are realizing values that are exactly equal to the socially necessary labour time required for their production. So it's equal. Now suppose the simple commodity production exchange economy has been monetized. Now this is a complex economy now. Once we establish money into the picture, there's a certain kind of a difficult relationships going on. But still, according to Marx, the equivalent exchange of equivalence still stands. So the interaction between the exchange between the pen and the pencils through money still actually achieved the law of value. That is, it must be materialized. The exchange must be following the value that is actually dependent on the labor, the social necessary labor time required for the goods. So again, this is again simple stuff. Gold is basically the money commodity, and gold have its value from the amount of works to produce that particular gold. So for instance, we imagine gold is basically is equal to 2 hours of labor, 2 hours of abstract labor, which is equal to like say 1 pound. So meaning to say 1 pound of gold is equal to 2 hours of labor. So for a pencil, which is actually considered of 4 hours of labor, will be equal to 2 pounds. So that's nothing. So that's the kind of interactions there. Okay. So one product exchange to money, then exchange to another product. It's simple, it's quite easy, no problem there. But it's become problematic when you have M equal to C. M is the exchange of commodity. And okay, how do you understand this particular thing, by the way, before I explain later? So instead of commodities exchange for money, you sell your commodities for money. You have a commodity, you produce yourself, then you sell it, you get the money, then you buy another things. So that's the common transactions. But now what we have here in the capitalist economy, according to Marx, he said there's something very peculiar happen. When you have money, you buy capital. Then from there, you produce something. You produce a good, then you sell, you get a higher amount of money, which is the profits. So how does the equal exchange of the equivalence exchange of value? What is it term again? Exchange of equivalence applies here. Supposedly, if the same amount of money, see, it's 2 hours of labor involved here. So how does suddenly at the end of the relationship, at the end of the transaction, you get more money? So where does the value come from? Okay, somebody say labor.
Non-abstract labor.
Sorry, more abstract labor. Non-abstract labor. Oh, okay, that's interesting. So before that, I mean, let's acknowledge that we have Akmal in the house. Actually, when I was, where's Lini? When I was in the car, just to share with you, with all of you, just to relax your mind. When I was in the car, I was asking whether Akmal can come today or not. He said he couldn't make it. He might come a bit late because he have a Quran class. So I was shocked because you choose Quran. I'm just kidding. I was like, wrong choice or something like that. I mean, I was just making a joke, you know. Then I was asking like what kind of Quranic classes and everything is it? So it's actually tasmih classes, right?
Everyone needs to know about it.
Tasmih classes is you have to recite the Quran and everything like that lah. Basically, I was in South a bit when I was in the car, so I suggested to Dini that maybe we should actually somehow cancel the class and just play a Quranic citations. You know, okay, then she suggested to me, she said, okay, you know what, not just reciting Quran, we just recite the Qurans where it's mentioned the Azab Kubur. Why then put Marx pictures on the side, Like this is the picture of a guy who actually somehow 80s and everything, so you know what's going to happen to him on the graveyard? This is the things about, something like that. Just a little jokes that I have in the car. Okay, this is something peculiar here. So I'll just write it down. So from money, you have a money which is basically equal to money 1. Then you somehow engage in a certain process. You try to buy capital. Commodity. Capital is equal to commodity. Then you produce another good, X. Then you sell the good, then you have money 2. This money 2 is actually higher than money 1. So where does the money come from? Where does the surplus value come from? So that's the question. Okay, this is a depiction of a production of commodity. This is the very core, this is the 101 capitalist relations. Why? And in fact, the reason why we call it capitalist, because of this. Because it's a production process centered on capital, and it's established based on who owns the capital, and who owns the capital, and who works for the capital, in a way. So in this particular kind of relationships, there's a capital, according to Marx, there's 2 things. There's a fixed capital, there's a variable capital. Workers. What? Okay, just one more. Here. Lecturers need a picture too, by the way. Okay, I'm just going to pretend to teach you, that's all. Okay. So they can't be a violation of the exchange of equivalents. And again, this is explained. Well, I'm not going to explain this because I think this is quite easy to understand. But the point is, he was trying to say that at the end of the day, this surplus value must come from cannot arise from the exchange of or circulation of commodities. Okay, this surplus of value must come from within the process. There's no violations here. No one's violating any law or rules. Because at the end of the day, at least according to Marx, that the values are being transferred from M1 to M2. But the certain things happen there. Let's add another value that cause M2 which is to be greater than M1. So the profits, the end product, after the transactions occur, you get more money than you started. He examined the process. He said there's no violations of value there. But again, if there's no violation of value, this must be something peculiar happened in the process here. So what is it? He said. Okay, this is very interesting part. This is a very dialectical part of it. The surplus value must have its origin both in circulations and not in circulations. Confused, right? Why? You say this? Just bear this in mind for a while. He said that the surplus value comes from the same law of value. This must be a kind of transactions, but also not in transactions. What does he mean by that? Okay, he meant this. First, we have to understand that we are a thing called labor power. What is a labor power? So when a labor engaged in transaction process or work with a capitalist, what he was selling is actually labor power. So again, labor power, when he was selling the labor power becomes a commodity. And commodity have 2 characteristics. What is it? There's a use value, there's exchange value. Okay, for a common goods, the exchange value are based on the labor time. But if the labor power, how do you measure the exchange value? Social, that's labor time. But how do you measure it? In a way, can you measure when you exchange your labor with the, say, if you like to work with the capitalists, you're basically selling your labor powers, right? So how do you determine the amount of the value of your labor to the capitalists? Because there's no standards. Sorry? Skills. That's true, but labor power doesn't involve skills. Just imagine this abstract labor we're talking about here. You are trying to contribute a labor power. Say like, say skills have become an issue. Say, okay, I'm willing to learn, for instance. I'm going to learn the skills. But again, those learning skills, the learning process, also part of the labor works too. It's part of labor because you are learning something for you to be able to do the works. So it's a kind of a labor activities too. So that particular process, how do you judge the value of the labor? So, one thing, labor power is a commodity that laborers are trying to sell to the capitalists. And there's a conditions that for labor to sell their labors, there must exist a free market of some sort for them to sell their labors, right? So first, for them to be able to sell their labors, like any other goods, you must own the labor power. That is, the labor power must be yours. You must establish. This is metaphysical claims. If the goods are, if you like to sell a good to somebody else, that particular good must be yours. So if you like to sell your labor power must be yours. And you must freely do so. Here, he's kind of like trying to be very sarcastic about it. You must freely do so. You must freely wanted to actually exchange your labors. At the same time, he's perfectly acknowledged that you are somehow forced to sell your labors. Because if you don't do it, you'll be starved to death. So there's a kind of like quote-unquote freedom he was trying to imply. He never used the quote-unquote, I think. I can't remember whether he used it or not, but this later was being developed by Lenin. But he said there's certain kind of a irony here that he pointed out, that even though, unlike any other goods, this particular kind of market, the labor market, you are forced to sell in the disguise of freedom. So if labor power is a commodity, it must have exchange value and its value. That's what's being said already. So the exchange value of labor power is identified with the value of the means of subsistence necessary for the maintenance of its owner. Here he went back to Ricardo and Smith. He said that the wages will be determined by the subsistence wages to produce the same number of population, the labor populations in the economy. So, because again, there's no basis. Unlike goods, you have a basis. You can say, okay, we're going to look at the labor times required to produce a particular goods. But when you are selling labors, which is the labors itself, how are you going to judge? There's no judge, there's no standards. So what they do, what the capitalists do is they can actually put the wages as the mean of subsistence of the minimum wages, if you like, of the particular industry. This is again, it's a very abstract thing. He was looking at the minimum wages for you to be able to somehow reproduce the same number of the labor populations. It's good enough for you to survive. That's basically the definitions of it. For you to survive and to have one kid. Remember I told you last time. For you to be able to sustain your lineage. So, in a given country at a given period, the average amount of means for subsistence necessary for the workers is a known data. Okay, he never explained how much. Okay, again, he was playing in a very abstract dimension here. When he said it's a mean of subsistence wages, it's because he said at the earlier part of the book, he said it's basically social. So we don't know how much. It depends on what time. It depends on which era. So you have a different subsistence wages that somehow is good enough to sustain your maintenance of its owner. And I think Ricardo somehow actually added to it that it's not just sustaining your life, but also good enough for you to be able to want to work. I think in the slides of Ricardo, if you look at the slides, that the minimum wages is not just equal for you to survive, but it's also equal to a level where you are at least wanted to work, in a way. But still, it's a very basic minimum wages now. It's a known data. It's not trying to explain how much. It's something that is social, something that is given to the society. Okay, this is the use value of the labor power. So the use value of the labor power have two things. qualitative part and the quantitative part. Again, the same thing that he applied to commodities. Because labor power here is the object of commodities. The qualitative part is that refer to the performance of concrete labor, useful labor, and the creation of specific use value. Its performance means, like you mentioned, skills. The quantitative use value of labor power is the value of labor power to create a potential value in excess of its own value. This is where the exploitations comes in a way. So again, the use of the labor power is first to produce something. It's to perform some actions to produce something. And the second function of the labor power in this particular system, it's not inherent to it's not something ontologically true. That is to say, because you labor, you're going to be this. No, because he was trying to say, this in this particular system, in these social relations, this is how it works. That if you are labor power, you're selling labor powers, that your labor power will be creating a value. What he meant by that is that that particular value is not for you, it's for someone else. As so to Marx' proof of the origin of space value. So here, labor power was framed that if you are selling your labors in this particular system, it was framed that if you are selling your labors, you are performing a certain act, one, and you are actually adding values in the sense that the value that you put will not be yours. You'll be adding value to some other people. You'll be adding value to some other people's play, if you like. Who are the beneficiaries of the value? It's the capitalists, or the one that owns the capital. Okay, this is basically a display of the example, the manipulative example of the concepts. So, for example, if one labor is employed for 12 hours, it's being employed for 12 hours. Let's try to do mathematical bits of it. So, this is trying to produce good X, produce good Q. So, how many hours of labor? Can you do that for me? 12 hours, right? Okay. And 1 shilling of gold is equal to how many? 2 hours. 1 shilling. 1 pound. Sir. Okay, I use ringgit. I'm somehow get use of the British pound. 1 ringgit is equal to 2 hours. 1 year production use up to 20 weight of, this is the raw materials, the weight of cotton, the raw materials, and which equal to 40 hours of labor, which is equal to 20 shillings. Raw materials, 40 hours of work value. So this is the depreciation part, where the capitals are being used for the capitals to sustain the capital. It's a 4 shilling worth of machines, if you like. It's not trying to buy the capital, it's trying to sustain for the capital to work, the machine to work throughout the time. This is depreciation, right? Yeah. So depreciation, anybody under the economy should know the word. It's equal to 4 shillings, which is how much? How much labor? 8 hours. 8 hours, huh? So that's the calculation of the total number of hours for the goods to produce the particular goods. So total number of hours involved is 60 hours, which means 30 shillings. Why? Because one ringgit or 30 ringgit lah. 1 ringgit is equal to 2 hours of labor. So it's the whole production process involves 60 hours of labor. That means they're going to sell the product at 30 ringgits. So the capitalist, when the capitalist comes here, so first he has to pay 20 shillings for the cotton and the machines. That's true, he can't avoid it because he owns it. So he has to supply the raw materials, he has to supply the depreciation part of the capital. So now, if they pay for that, what's left now is 6 shillings, which is basically the value added by the workers. The labor power produce something, that's the amount of labor power is actually involved in the particular process. The value of the labor power is equal to 6 shillings. So if the capitalists give 6 shillings, then there's no surplus value. There's no profit for the capitalists. But if they give you 3 cents, 3 ringgit, they can get another 3 ringgits. So that's where the exploitation comes in, because according to this relationship, and according to, if we follow the equivalent of exchange that we mentioned before this, that supposedly the labor should get the amount of ringgit that he, based on the works that he put. He put a 12 hours of work, which equal to 6 shillings. But the thing is, when it comes to these particular relations, the payments are now known as wage, and that wage is actually equal to 2 things: the performance that you do. The second thing is the value added that you add to the workers itself. So in a way, it's part of the agreement, at least according to this particular framework. I'm not going to pay the number of values that you put. I'm just going to assume that you added the value to me. I'm just going to pay you the 3 shillings, which is good enough for you to sustain yourself. So this is why Marx said this is kind of exploitation, because you exploit something that is not yours. Somebody would argue, and a capitalist would argue, but this is legit. Why? Because I own the capital. Hence why at the very core of Marx's critique of capital is a critique of private properties. Because he said by calling upon private properties right, you somehow be able to manipulate these relationships and somehow exploit the workers. I have a problem with the argument. This is a moral argument, it's a moral critique of capitalism. He was trying to say that in this particular system and these particular relations, if the equivalent of exchange works, there are exploitations in the process. Is it exploitation? Is it not? That's the question. Because I'm an anti-capitalist, but my attack on capitalism will not be coming from this. I'm not going to come up with a moral argument saying, you know what, this is exploitations. You can, but I'm not that favorable of that kind of a line of arguments, because here you are playing with the moral arguments. Then you have to somehow come up with what is exploitation. Is it exploited? Is it exploited or not? How do you decide? There's a moral debates there, and then this long, endless debate, if you like. So, because I show you the second session that we're going to look at, which is next week, is we oppose capitalism. No, I'm not going to drag you all with me to hell. No, just kidding. I'm not going to drag you all with into this particular camp. But the reason why I oppose capitalism, because I think capitalism have crises. The crises are inherent in the system itself, and Marx, the contradictions are in the system itself, and these are being pointed by Marx in the chapter, especially in chapter the Capital Volume 2. But if you like to actually, if you are more on the moral side of the arguments, this is where you get it from. Somebody will be exploited for the exchange of equivalence to take place. Again, this is variable capital, constant capital, I mentioned it just now. So the rate of surplus value, this is another term. The rate of surplus value means how much surplus value you get from the variable capital, or from the value added by the workers. So you have there's a 6 shillings, right? The 3rd shillings you pay for the workers, the other 3rd shillings you pay for yourself, profits. So the rate of surplus value is basically 100%. Okay, why I'm telling you this is going to be useful later when you look at the prices, because this Marx will show in his long, not that long mathematical equations. This will somehow tend to make these kind of relationships will actually produce a certain phenomenon where the rate of profits will fall, and at the same time the workers are somehow dissatisfied, and there'll be a revolution comes in, and stuff like that. So we're going to look at that, the crisis later, but just bear in mind when we mention rate of surplus value, what he meant is that the amount of value the amount of surplus value that you get from the value of the workers added in the production process. 6 shillings, 3 go to profits, 3 go to workers. How much rate? What are the ratios? 100%. These are total expectations, I know it. Very, very cruel. Get it? Yeah.
Right.
Sorry?
We mentioned before that basically Marx critique on capitalism is critique of private property.
Yeah.
So what is it that Marx proposed as an alternative to private property? Is it communal or
Is it communal? Because he never actually proposed anything, I think I mentioned before this in some of the previous classes, that he actually somehow suggested that we should abolish private properties, right? But what are the middle path here? I mean, are you suggesting that I can't own a pencil, I can't own a pen, I can't own a laptop? Oh, you have a different sort of arrangement here. And what Harvey, one of the Marxists, profound Marxists in today's time, he proposed a theory of appropriations of properties. Have you heard of it? Yeah, this. Oh, okay. I think I mentioned it before. I guess familiar with that. Do you guys remember that? Not familiar because I mentioned it before. Maybe you haven't attended the classes. But okay, let me repeat that again. The theory of appropriations of properties are this. It's some kind of a middle way between two things. Either you let everyone's owned by the society, everything's owned by the society, or everything's owned by individuals. They are the middle way called appropriations. That is to say, that land, for example, it can be managed by certain individuals with certain conditions. That particular land must be appropriated for the benefit of the society. Meaning to say, if you want to own something, it's okay as long as you appropriate it, and there's kind of implications towards society.
As long as you realize it and it benefits the whole society.
Benefits the whole section of society. What it's trying to exclude here is, for example, house properties. You buy a house, but you never use it, you just leave it there, and then you come once in a while, and then you sell it. This is again one of the core problems that caused the crisis that we have in 2008. So this kind of appropriation properties framework is trying to somehow diminish that, try to eliminate that, and also it tries to eliminate those in power, those who are rich, to buy large properties that they can't use. Celebrities, Hollywood celebrities, right? They own a house of what, 80 rooms? More than that, maybe yes, more than that. But did they use them?
No.
If not, then somebody have to do something about it. In a way. So the imagination is this: the very basis of the whole concept that everything is owned by public, but there are a way of arranging it through individuals. That is, you can actually have a certain properties, but it must actually have a certain implications to a society. And of course, it's an abstract sense.
I remember reading his manifesto. He said he wants to abolish private property and not personal property. That was I think the exact quote he said. So that was followed up by like a sort of statement that said, the reason we're doing this is to stop the subjugation of fellow men. And that was like his moral argument for why we should abolish private property and not personal property.
Yeah, because the word private property's right is this. You own something, and whether you use it or not, it's really up to you. You can have a land, you can have anything, machines, and you can use it as you wish. Yes. So that's a private property's right. It's your right to do it. So that's where I think Marx disagreed, because by establishing it, by calling upon rights, you can't touch it at all, regardless, because it's your natural rights. And if you are following a political philosophy debates, me myself, I think I'm coming from a more left libertarian framework, which I think that there are no such thing as property's right in absolute sense.
You're a libertarian?
Left libertarian. That is it. Whatever things that we own is not really ours, because before we own it, there's something that somebody else owns it. Just give example, lands like that. Lands, yeah, you get it from your dad, but your dad get it from your grandfather. Your grandfather get it from someone else. And throughout the long particular process, the land was once unowned. So what makes you suddenly becomes what makes your claims justifiable to say that okay, these lands are totally mine, and I can do anything with it forever? Because again, if you look at the history of the land itself, it was once unowned, and there are states where it's somehow being used by someone else. And in fact, throughout that particular change, there are a lot of war happening. That somebody stole the other people's land. So in a way, you can't claim a universal ownership of certain things. That is to say, it belongs to you forever and ever, because at the very history of the good itself, it's not unowned. by anybody else. It's kind of like irony if you call it, this is mine and it's going to be mine forever, while the art history, it's not forever yours at the first place. At some point in history, before that. Okay, this is basically the, oh shit. Okay, this is basically the summary of it, blah, 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 blah. I think I explained pretty much what's being said. Why it's being exploited, because the value was added by the labourers, but then it was not paid to the labourers on the equal amounts. So this is basically the kind of a relationship that the capitalists have the money, buy capital, then he hire the workers, he produce the product, and then he get the profits from the products. And the profit must actually higher than the capitals, or else why you engage in the business?
Yeah.
Okay, this is just this is something that you're going to look at when you look at the crisis later. These are some of the technical things that Marx introduced before you understand how capitalism become a crisis-prone systems. Okay, it's a rest time. I'm going to show you because we started off with no backgrounds of Marx, right? So I'm going to show you a play. I think you know Marx and Soho. And trying to understand how Marx comes into being as a man and as a human being. Okay, you guys can do this.
Have you read a living Karl?
I tried to read what's history. I haven't finished it.
It was long.
American history is kind of more boring to me.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I like writing.
Let's try it.
Can you make it?
How about the sounds? Can somebody look on that? Is it here?
You to come. You
Yes.
weren't put off by all those idiots who said Marx is dead.
Brian's writing and speak next year.
Okay, this play, the background of this play is this, that Marx was suddenly descended from heaven, or hell, I don't know, it depends on how you see it. He was descended from heaven again because he wanted to clear his name. So he landed in Soho, but a wrong Soho, because Soho, there's two places in Soho. There's one in England, there's one in America. So he landed in the wrong Soho, but again, he's trying to address the audiences that to clear his names of all the dirty things that are being done through his names. So this is Marx, by the way.
Thank God. An audience. Good of you to come. You weren't put off by all those idiots who said Marx is dead. Well, I am. And I'm not. That's dialectics for you. You might be wondering how I got here. Public transportation. I didn't want to return here. I wanted to return to Soho. That's where I lived in London. But a bureaucratic mix-up, and here I am. Soho, New York. Well, I always wanted to visit New York. Why have I returned? To clear my name. I've been reading your newspaper. They're all declaring that my ideas are dead. It's nothing new. These clowns have been saying this for over 160 years. Don't you wonder why is it necessary to declare me dead again and again? Well, I've had it up to here. I asked for the right to come back for a short while. I told you there are rules. It's a bureaucracy. It is permitted to read, even to watch, not to travel. I protested, of course. And had some support. Socrates told them the untraveled life is not worth living. Gandhi, fasting. Mother Jones, spread to bacon. Buddha, chanting. Oh. Mark Twain even came to my defense in his own strange way. But the others kept quiet. My God, at this point, what have they got to lose? Yes, there too, I have a reputation as a troublemaker. And there too, protest works. Finally, they said, all right, you can go. You can have an hour or so to speak your mind. But remember, no agitating. They do believe in freedom of speech, but within limits. They are liberals. So you can spread the word. Marx is back. But understand one thing. I am not a Marxist. I once said that to Peter, and he almost croaked. I should tell you about Peter. We were living in London at the time, Jenny and I, and the little ones. 2 dogs, 3 cats, 2 birds, hardly living. A little flat on Dean Street, right near where they dumped the city sewage. We were in London because I had been expelled from the continent. Expelled from the Rhineland. Yes, from my birthplace. I had done dangerous things. I was the editor of a newspaper, the Rheinische Zeitung. Hardly revolutionary, although I suppose the most revolutionary act one can engage in is to tell the truth. You see, the police in the Rhineland were arresting poor people for gathering firewood from the estates of the rich. I wrote an editorial protesting that. They decided to censor our newspaper. I wrote an editorial declaring there was no freedom of the press.